Devaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtiprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. So, continuing with our discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 15th chapter, Pandavas retire timely, text number 44 onwards. Udicim praviveshasham gatpurvam mahatmabhi hirtibram param dhyayan navartet yato gataha. He then started. See, he means Yudhishthira Maharaj. So Sud Goswami is talking about Yudhishthira Maharaj, what he did. He then started towards the north, treading the path accepted by his forefathers and great men, to devote himself completely to the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he lived in that way wherever he went. So he was completely thinking of, completely absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna. It is understood from this verse that Maharaj Yudhishthira followed in the footsteps of his forefathers and the great devotees of the Lord. We have discussed many times before that the system of Varnashram Dharma, as it was strictly followed by the inhabitants of the world, specifically by those who inhabited the Aryavrat province of the world, emphasizes the importance of leaving all household connections at a certain stage of life. The training and education was so imparted, and thus a respectable person like Maharaj Yudhishthira had to leave all family connection for self-realization and going back to Godhead. So this is actually the teachings of Varnashram Dharma. They are all got perverted now. It has become caste system, which was not the idea. So Varnashram Dharma was to ultimately lead person to self-realization. The idea is self-realization. So, so like Yudhishthira Maharaj, so timely at the right time, he had to leave everything and go for sannyas. First vanpras and then sannyas. No king or respectable gentleman would continue family life till the end because that was considered suicidal and against the interest of the perfection of human life. In order to be free from all family encumbrances and devote oneself 100% in the devotional service of Lord Krishna, this system is always recommended for everyone because it's a path of authority. So this system, Varnashram system, is recommended for everyone because the ultimate goal is to devote oneself to Krishna, not be entangled throughout our life in the family affairs. The Lord instructs in Bhagavad Gita that one must become a devotee of the Lord at least at the last stage of one's life. A sincere soul of the Lord, like Maharaj Yudhishthira, must abide by this instruction of the Lord for his own interest. The specific words Brahm Param indicate Lord Shri Krishna. This is corroborated in Bhagavad Gita by Arjuna with reference to great authorities like Asit Deval, Narad, and Vyas. Thus, Maharaj Yudhishthira, while leaving home for the north, constantly remembered Lord Shri Krishna within himself, following in the footsteps of his forefathers, as well as the great devotees of all times. So, this is the real goal of human life. To obviously to remember Krishna, to think of Krishna all the time, but at least for householders to start preparing for that. That's why, if you look at the title of this chapter, is the Pandavas retire timely. Means as soon as they heard the news of Krishna leaving the planet, they all said, "This is it. We don't want to be in charge of this kingdom anymore," and they all left. And left not just for anything else, but except to always think of Krishna. Of course, they are all devotees. Even living at the palace, they could have thought of Krishna, but they had to set an example for the general public to follow. That towards the end of life, one has to go for vanprasth and then sannyas. So this is the way to leave the family attachment. Text 45. Sarvitam anu jagmur bhratrah krit nishchaya kalina dharma mitrena drishtva sprishta praja bhuvi. The younger brothers of Maharaj Yudhishthir observed that the age of Kali had already arrived throughout the world and that the citizens of the kingdom were already affected by irreligious practice. Therefore, they decided to follow in the footsteps of their elder brother. The younger brothers of Maharaj Yudhishthira were already obedient followers of the great emperor, and they had sufficiently been trained to know the ultimate goal of life. They therefore decidedly followed their eldest brother in rendering devotion service to Lord Shri Krishna. According to the principles of Sanatana Dharma, one must retire from family life after half the duration of life is finished and must engage himself in self realization. But the question of engaging oneself is not always decided. Sometimes retired men are bewildered about how to engage themselves for the last days of life. So, in fact, the retired men, like like Prabhupada sometimes he says that when a person retired from government jobs, so they say something like 60 or 65 is a retirement age. So he sometimes jokingly said, even the government doesn't want them anymore because they are useless for the government to work. So they should understand this point that they have to retire. They have to work towards self-realization. In fact, not just they, everybody has to. But if if the training or if the practice hasn't been done when we are young, it's very difficult to take it up when we become old. It's very difficult. So that's why the training was started. And during those days, training started from the day of Brahmachari ashram. When they used to go to Gurukul, the training would start. And then, so by the time they had to leave, they had to take one press or sannyas, then they're fully trained, they're fully accustomed, and then they can take it up easily. But nowadays, all that system is gone, completely gone. So at least even staying at home, one can devote oneself to Krishna, to service of Krishna, to chanting the holy names, to reading Prabhupada's books. That at least we can come into. But it is difficult. If one hasn't taken it up when one is young, it's very difficult to take it up when one is old. And why go further? I see my parents. It's I just cannot convince them. I've stopped convincing them, trying to even convince them. I've stopped that because then there's lots of arguments and problems go on. So I can at least pray for them. That's all I can do. Here is a decision by authorities like the Pandavas. All of them engaged themselves in favorably culturing the devotional service of Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to Swami Sridhar, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, or fruitive activities, philosophical speculation, and salvation, as conceived by several persons, are not the ultimate goal of life. They are more or less practiced by persons who have no information of the ultimate goal of life. The ultimate goal of life is already indicated by the Lord Himself in Bhagavad Gita, and the Pandavas were intelligent enough to follow it without hesitation. So they were intelligent, they had the practice, so they followed it. And not just followed it when they had to leave, they were following it even from the time of ruling over the whole world. Text 46. Te sadhu krita sarvartha gyatvati antikam atmanaha mansa dharya masur vaikuntha charanam bhujam. They all had performed all the principles of religion and as a result rightly decided that the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna are the supreme goal of all. Therefore, they meditated upon his feet without interruption. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that only those who have done pious deeds in their previous lives and have become freed from the results of all impious acts can concentrate upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, Shri Krishna. The Pandavas, not only in this life but also in the previous lives, had always performed the supreme pious work, and thus they are ever free from the reactions of impious work. Of course, Pandavas, they are the eternal associates of Krishna. So they all come from Vaikuntha planets to participate in Krishna's pastimes. But as a matter of principle, Prabhupada is saying, so they had performed the supreme pious work in the previous life. It is quite reasonable, therefore, that they concentrated their minds upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha principles are accepted by persons who are not free from the results of impious action. To get free from the results of impious actions, one has to go through this Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Such persons affected with the contaminations of the above four principles cannot at once accept the lotus feet of the Lord in the spiritual sky. The Vaikuntha world is situated far beyond the material sky. The material sky is under the management of Durga Devi, or the material energy of the Lord. But the Vaikuntha world is managed by the personal energy of the Lord. So to get to the personal energy, to get to the internal energy of Lord, or the places managed or supervised by the internal energy, one has to start practicing from here only to work in the internal energy of the Lord, which is bhakti, yoga system basically. And bhakti yoga is the most easy, most powerful, most sublime process of all the yoga systems. Text 47-48. ध्यानोद्रिक्त्या भक्त्या विशुद्धिष्णः परे तस्मिन् नारायण पदे एकान्तमत्यो गतिम् अवापुर्दुर्वापां ते असद्भिर्विषयात्मभिः विधूतकल्मषास्थानं विरजेनात्मनेव हि. Thus, by pure consciousness, due to constant devotional remembrance, they attained the spiritual sky, which is ruled over by the Supreme Narayan, Lord Shri Krishna. This is attained only by those who meditate upon the one Supreme Lord without deviation. This abode of Lord Shri Krishna, known as Golok Vrindavan, cannot be attained by persons who are absorbed in the material conception of life. But the Pandavas, being completely washed of all material contamination, attained that abode in their very same bodies. So this is another superior feature of Pandavas. They attained the spiritual world in the very same bodies. Means the bodies they all became spiritual. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, a person freed from the three modes of material qualities, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, and situated in transcendence, can reach the highest perfection of life without change of body. Srila Sanatana Goswami in his Hari Bhakti Vilas says that a person, whatever he may be, can attain the perfection of a twice-born Brahman by undergoing the spiritual disciplinary actions under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. Exactly as a chemist can turn gunmetal into gold by chemical manipulation. So this Sanatana Goswami is giving this example. So chemist can turn gunmetal into gold by adding mercury to it actually. So similarly, a spiritual master, when bona fide spiritual master, when he gives initiation to a materialistic person, the person becomes eligible to become to get the perfection of a twice born Brahman, or eligible to go back to the spiritual world. But the process is by undergoing the spiritual disciplinary actions, means by undergoing the sadhana process. of the bhakti system. It is therefore the actual guidance that matters in the process of becoming a Brahman, even without change of body, or in going back to Godhead without change of body. So it's a matter of the actual guidance. The guidance is required. Guidance is basically to follow the yam and niyam of bhakti process. Yam means things we don't do. Niyam means things we have to do. Srila Jiva Goswami remarks that the word he used in this connection positively affirms this truth, and there is no doubt about this factual position. Bhagavad Gita 14:26 also affirms this statement of Srila Jiva Goswami when the Lord says that anyone who executes devotional service systematically without deviation can attain the perfection of Brahman by surpassing the contamination of the three modes of material nature. And when the Brahman perfection is still more advanced by the self-same execution of devotional service, there is no doubt at all that one can attain the supreme spiritual planet, Golok Vrindavan, without change of body. As we have already discussed in connection with the Lord's returning to his abode without a change of body. So this body also becomes spiritualized when we are engaged completely without deviation in the process of bhakti. It will look material, but it will be completely spiritual. Prabhupada has given one example many times, just like he said, if you put an iron rod in fire, and if it is long enough, it remains long enough in the fire, then the iron rod, it will act just like fire. Although it will look like an iron rod, but the properties will change to that of fire. So similarly, when this material body, it is used in the service of the Lord, then after, no, it depends upon how rigorous practices we have done. So when we are perfect, then the body will look like a material body, but it will not be material. It will be completely spiritual. And at that time, then we are ready to go back home, back to Godhead within the self same body, within this body itself. So that is something very new in the Bhakti Yoga process. Text 49. Viduro api parityajya prabhase dehamatmana Krishna veshin tachittaha pitribhi svakshayam yayo. Vidura, while on pilgrimage, left his body at Prabhas. Because he was absorbed in the thought of Lord Krishna, he was received by the denizens of the Pitriloka planet, where he returned to his original post. Because he still had to perform his duties as Yamraj. The difference between the Pandavas and Vidura is that the Pandavas are eternal associates of the Lord, the personality of Godhead, whereas Vidura is one of the administrative demigods in charge of the Pitriloka planet and is known as Yamraj. Men are afraid of Yamraj because it's only he who awards punishment to the miscreants of the material world. But those who are devotees of the Lord have nothing to fear from him. To the devotees, he is a cordial friend, but to the non-devotees, he is fear personified. As we have already discussed, it is understood that Yamraj was cursed by Manduk Muni to be degraded as Shudra, and therefore Vidura was an incarnation of Yamraj. As an eternal servitor of the Lord, he displayed his devotional activities very ardently and lived a life of a pious man. So much so that a materialistic man like Dhritarashtra also got salvation by his instruction. So, by his pious activities in the devotional service of the Lord, he was able to always remember the lotus feet of the Lord. And thus he became washed of all contamination of a Shudra born life. So, this is another characteristic of bhakti. Vidurji, he was born as a Shudra, but there was no discrimination that a Shudra cannot perform bhakti. Shudra doesn't mean just from taking birth in the Shudra family. Of course, he was born in a Shudra family. So that was like a condition on him, but he wasn't a Shudra. He was so intelligent, he was like a Brahman. but but a person, so any person born in any family, in any condition of life, can perform bhakti and can go back home, back to God in this life itself. There's no restriction on that. At the end, he was again received by the denizens of Pitriloka and posted in his original position. And nobody tried to take over his position also when he was away. Of course, he had appointed Aryama in his place, but when Vidurji came back as Yamaraj, Aryama vacated the post. That is unheard of in the modern day politics. If you leave the post, then you are gone. Who cares? Who were you before? That's why nobody wants to leave the chair. The demigods are also associates of the Lord without personal touch, whereas the direct associates of the Lord are in constant personal touch with Him. The Lord and His personal associates incarnate in many universes without cessation. The Lord remembers them all, whereas the associates forget due to their being very minute part and parcels of Lord. They are apt to forget such incidents due to being infinitesimal. This is corroborated in the Bhagavad Gita. So we are very small, and especially the associates of Krishna who come, they are all jivas who come and uh, take part in his pastimes. They forget, but Krishna doesn't forget. He remembers everything, every universe, every pastime, every person he has associated with. It's amazing. Text 50. Draupadi Chatadagyaya Patinam Anpekshitam Vasudeve Bhagavati Ekantam Atiraptam. Draupadi also saw that her husbands, without caring for her, were leaving home. She knew well about Lord Vasudeva, Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Both she and Subhadra became absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna and attained the same results as their husbands. See, even Draupadi and Subhadra. So it doesn't matter if one is in female body, one can attain the topmost destination just by remembering Krishna, just by performing the devotion service. When flying an airplane, one cannot take care of other planes. Everyone has to take care of his own plane, and if there is any danger, no other plane can help another in that condition. Similarly, at the end of life, when one has to go back home, back to God, everyone has to take care of himself without help rendered by another. The help is, however, offered on the ground before flying in space. Similarly, the spiritual master, the father, the mother, the relatives, the husband, and others can all render help during one's lifetime. But while crossing the sea, one has to take care of himself and utilize the instructions formally received. Draupadi had 5 husbands, and no one asked Draupadi to come. Draupadi had to take care of herself without waiting for her great husbands. And because she was already trained, she at once took to concentration upon the lotus feet of Lord Vasudeva Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The wives also got the same result as their husbands, in the same manner, that is to say, without changing their bodies, they reached the destination of Godhead. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur suggests that both Draupadi and Subhadra, although her name is not mentioned here, got the same result. None of them had to quit the body. So Draupadi, Subhadra, they also, of course, it's not mentioned here that they went to the forest. So they stayed at home, but they they meditated on Krishna, and they also left the body. They didn't leave the body. With the same body, they went back to the spiritual world. Text 51. यह श्रद्धेतद् भगवत्प्रियाणां पाण्डवसुतानामिति सम्प्रायणं शृणोति अलं स्वस्त्यायनं पवित्रं लब्ध्वा हरो भक्तिमुपैति सिद्धिम्. The subject of the departure of the sons of Pandu for the ultimate goal of life back to Godhead is fully auspicious and perfectly pure. Therefore, anyone who hears this narration with devotional faith certainly gains the devotional service of the Lord, the highest perfection of life. See, this Shruti Fal, Sutta Goswami or even Shukdev Goswami has given towards the end of chapters of Bhagavatam. Not every chapter, but many chapters they have given. So only requirement is, only condition that they put is, therefore anyone who hears this narration with devotional faith. So only thing that is lacking in us is that devotional faith. Then when we hear it with devotional faith, it certainly gains the devotional service of the Lord, the highest perfection of life. So it's a narration about Krishna, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's devotees, pastimes. Anything we sit down and hear with faith, it will have a great change in our life, in our heart. Srimad Bhagavatam is a narration about the personality of Godhead and the devotees of the Lord, like the Pandavas. The narration of the personality of Godhead and his devotees is absolute in itself, and thus to hear it with the devotional attitude is to associate with the Lord and constant companions of the Lord. By the process of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, one can attain the highest perfection of life, namely going back home, back to Godhead without failure. So, this is what Prabhupada is writing. Without failure, one can go back home just by listening with faith the pastimes or the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is how powerful Bhagavatam is. I'll stop here. Today is also a wonderful day. Today is the day when Srila Prabhupada took sannyas. So sannyas, of course, Pandavas took sannyas. They left home and they went back to spiritual world. But Srila Prabhupada took sannyas to come to all of us and to preach all over the world. So this is a special day for all of us, because if Prabhupada hadn't taken sannyas and come to the West to preach and to establish ISKCON in the West, and then he went back to India and established the movement in India, where would we be if Prabhupada hadn't done that? I don't think any of us Monday morning 8:30 to 9 a.m. would be listening to Srimad Bhagavatam. A person like me, I don't think he would be speaking on Bhagavatam. I would be doing lots of nonsense things than reading or speaking on Bhagavatam. So today is a day when we can all thank to Srila Prabhupada that at that advanced age he took sannyas and then he came to the West. At the age of 70 he came and he started the movement. So maybe someday we can take up this study of Prabhupada Lilamrita also and read the wonderful things that he had achieved and all the struggle that he went through. It's amazing. And at that age, at that advanced age, at that age, people want to live in Vrindavan. They don't. They take a vow, I will never leave Vrindavan. And Prabhupada, at that age, he left Vrindavan. Not just left Vrindavan, he left India altogether. Came to the West to preach, where nobody knew anything about Vaishnavism, Bhakti, Krishna. They had never heard of. Now in America, we find vegan food is getting popular. At that time, there was not even vegetarian. They never heard of anybody being a vegetarian. And at that time, Prabhupada came to the West to preach. So really, hats off to them. Hats off to him and his followers. Obviously, afterwards, they took up this Herculean task, which is still going on, and it will continue to go on. So today is the day he took sannyas, and his Guru Maharaj actually ordered him in a dream, and Prabhupada took it seriously. Of course, afterwards his god brother also told him to go ahead and take sannyas. So he took it up seriously. So thanks to Srila Prabhupada, we all are here trying to discuss Srimad Bhagavatam and getting our lives purified. Hare Krishna. So anybody has any questions or comments?
No questions, Prabhu. Thank you very much for the wonderful class.
Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, you all have a wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Prabhu.
Prabhuji, thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.